Welcome to Dose of Social, your recipe for social media success. I'm Lindsay Mauk,
I'm Kayla Pearlstein.
and this is Dose
Dose
of
of
Social.
social.
We are so excited today to have our guest, Derek Sabori, founder of the Underswell, joining us. Thank you so much, Derek.
Yeah, thank
Thanks
you.
for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I know, we are too. So, fun story about how Derek and I met. We actually met in person, was it 18 years ago, Derek? 20 years
Something like
ago?
that. Yeah, at least.
It was early on in my career, and I grew up as a surfer and snowboarder in Southern California. Loved all the surf brands, Roxy, Volcom, and I was introduced to Derek when he was working at Volcom in the sustainability department. So shout out to John Herson for making that connection so many years ago.
Yeah, John.
All right. So, Derek, can we get started by having you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background? And I did share a little bit, but go ahead and get started.
Yeah, sure. So, yep, Derek Sabori. I started my career, I think, in the action sports industry, and so that has, of course, informed sort of the work that I've done and do. A lot of that ended up, trying to transitioning into sustainability. So I did a lot of work in sustainability for years, but I didn't start there in sustainability. So I've kind of had this winding path through a few different things. Most recently, though, like you said, I've got a company called the Underswell. And I know we're going to dive in and kind of talk about why I started it, when I started it, how I started it. But now, for years, I was doing sustainability consulting. I developed and designed a sustainability and online sustainability course, kind of a foundational learning course for companies and brands so they could get their companies, their teams up to speed and ready for the shift into doing business more responsibly and different in this new age of sustainability focus. So I still do that, but really my focus right now is really on helping people develop and refine their careers. As I've come into the later stages of my career, it's something that I'm really fascinated with, and I just think there's so many great conversations to be had. And podcasting has also become just a really big part of what I'm doing now. So, in a nutshell, I guess all of those things: sustainability, fashion, apparel industry, and now podcasting.
Love
Very
it. And
cool.
we love podcasting too.
We do. I'm curious to know what led you to create the Underswell.
One, I guess, basically a need. I had been at Vulcan for almost 20 years. So, as Lindsay said, that's where we met. That's where I spent a lot of my time. That's, I think, really how I was identified, right? Was just as a Vulcan person, a longtime employee. I'd gone through a whole bunch of different roles there. My first job there was answering the phones for free, basically. I was an internship. So, led into the merchandising and design department, worked through product, went back to school for my MBA because I was an art major. But as I was starting to manage teams and people, I realized, oh my gosh, I need some more tools here. So my career was kind of moving along nicely in the early, I guess, mid 2000s. Actually, it was about 2006, 2007. We watched an Inconvenient Truth. I don't know if you've seen that climate documentary. We did a lunch and learn. I watched that. That just sort of got me going. Why do I not know anything about this? And I pivoted everything into sustainability. So because I had been doing that sort of from an early stage on, there were not a lot of us in the action sports industry at the time focusing on sustainability like that. I worked with Jeff Wilson and Rowan Atwood, other colleagues. Jeff was at Quicksilver, Rowan was at Soltech. We were trying to kind of form an industry group, so we were really sort of creating our personal brand around sustainability. As I became sort of an expert, or I guess people looked to me then, I guess, in the company as the sustainability expert. I was not. I was just learning and I was developing all of those skills, going to conferences, meeting everybody I could. But the more that I learned, the more I guess I became the expert, the more I put myself out there. It just sort of became, my brand and my industry position. And there was some whispering that started happening where people were saying, hey, you should really go out on your own. You could go out on your own and you could help more companies, doing this work. So that seed was planted. I had always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. Volcom gave me the entrepreneurial opportunities. I always get sort of this 5-year itch where I just decide that it is time for me to really start focusing on something else. And Volcom allowed that. I had all these different roles. I went from an intern to working in the design department, managing merchandising and design. I built the planning and analysis department. I built the sustainability department, like all of these things that didn't exist before I started them. So opportunity, but I always had that itch to do my own thing and really, be out on my own. So what an opportunity came. One of the early guys there at Volcom, his name is Troy Eckert. He was the first one of the first employees, head of marketing for many years there, kind of a marketing brand genius. He came to me in 2014 or so and said, "Hey, I've got this idea for a brand. I want to do a yoga brand, surf inspired. I want it to be sustainable. You're the guy for this. Come and do this brand with me." So I was like, wow, great opportunity to be a co-founder at a brand, but we were not going to pay ourselves. We didn't raise enough money to pay ourselves salary for 2 years or anything. So I had to have something on my own where I could generate income. Built the Underswell as sort of my consultancy to do that work and bring in some income while we built that small little brand to see where it would go.
Wow.
I love that. What ended up happening with that brand?
Yeah.
It's almost an episode of its own. So here's what's funny is Volk. So when we started, it was called KOZM, and it was a great concept. We were making really amazing products, and that space was like red hot at the time, right? We're 2015. I think we launched. I think it was the same year that Viore launched. So we just knew that we're like, okay, we're in the right spot. But we had kind of a different vibe because we were not doing anything. We were really trying to get away from any synthetic fiber look and feel products. So our yoga short was more of a casual look, but it was high performance, but it was a cotton hemp blend. And our t-shirts were like this blend of recycled cotton with recycled polyester, but more, and we had athletes like Chet Thomas and Strider Wasilewski, like people coming on being our ambassadors, in all different, surf, skate, and snow. So I think what went wrong, what happened is we built a beautiful website. We did all of our products here domestically. So I built out the supply chain here. We had full transparency. You could look to see where everything was made, where every component came from. We told you how much it cost. Everything had a sustainability story. Everything was beautiful. The thing that wasn't beautiful, though, I think was our profit, our margins, because our products they cost a lot to make and they were already expensive. We just couldn't price them any higher, which meant we had to go direct to consumer, which at that time, 2015, 16, like we knew, we're like, that's okay. This is going to be the play. We spent so much money though on everything. Shopify was not quite a thing yet. We actually consciously said, we're like, no, that's just not good enough. We're going to do our own. We're going to use WooCommerce and do all this other stuff. We built we overcomplicated it in my opinion. And we just didn't leave enough money for marketing. So all of our marketing was just grassroots. It was just slower than it should have been. And I think back now, if we would have just infused it with a good digital marketing campaign, brought in somebody to help us, like roll this out, stay consistent and persistent, put the spends in, Google ads, Facebook, whatever, I think, could have been a different story, but it's just not how it played out. So it lasted about 7-8 years, and we finally shut it down, or I shut it down. We had some shifts in ownership, and I ended up taking it over and just shut it down just a year or two ago, finally, just in a slow sort of anticlimactic shutdown, sadly.
Wow, that was very recent. So you, in my opinion, are one of the pioneers of sustainability in action sports.
Yeah.
So only because
some credit here.
thank you for that. But I was early on. I definitely was early on. But there were others. You know who was early on though? The outdoor industry there were a lot of people in the outdoor industry for sure. Fashion, European fashion also had some early leaders. But in our sort of Orange County, where many of the action sports brands came from, yeah, definitely there were just fingers full, not even a handful of us, just a few of us, kind of really leading the charge in this, and which meant every time we went to a show or a sustainability conference, we're connecting with all of those bigger brands that were doing things and kind of trying to come back and tell people about it. But the hard part, I think, for me is because I was so early in it, I also I got to be in that space when it was not as refined. It was way more of the Wild West, and you could get away with just sort of trying to convince people to do it because it was the right thing. And hey, let's just get started and build a strategy and sort of be at this high level. And then I watched it though, and this is what it's become: very, very specific And, it's so structured. And it got to this point where for me, it was starting to feel like I just don't know if I can keep up with any of the lanes, the specific lanes you have to be in to be a specialist in reporting, greenhouse gas accounting, chemicals management, social impact, supply chain, whatever. There is sustainability at every touch point in the value chain. And I'm not very good at drilling down and being the expert in something. I have a tendency to sort of be a high level generalist, which I think is a blessing and a curse. So I think it was good that I was early on, but sometimes I feel like that also sort of stifled my career in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it seems like now every brand has to think about what their sustainability practices and purpose-driven brands are so important now. I mean, I think every brand, if you're starting a brand today, you have to think about sustainability and you have to think about the purpose behind your brand and the mission, because that storytelling, the story behind the brand. I mean, obviously the sustainability practices are important, but being able to tell that story about what you're doing to make the world a better place beyond just the products you're creating is so important.
It's so important. And that is something we had always said. And we knew this was coming, right? We knew that, hey, your peers are going to be doing it. Customers are going to demand it. And regulation will come and compliance issues will come. And that has happened. But that is also what has changed it so dramatically now, because there are greenwashing laws. You have to be very careful on how you communicate. So sustainability communications is like its own area of expertise. Compliance with regulations coming out of Europe or out of Washington or out of New York or California. So everything is now so specific, and yeah, that's just not what I get very good at. I don't like kind of diving in and becoming the expert in any one area. So
with Gen Z and the types of brands they're looking to shop with, they look for sustainability now too. So that it's always been an important piece, but I think it's becoming an even more important piece.
Kayla, I believe that, and I'm with you on that. But I also, so I have an 18-year-old right now and a 20-year-old, and I watch them. And the biggest thing that they're interested in right now, I think, my older one, he's aligned with brands. He's a Volcom fan. He actually is a second generation. He worked over there at Volcom.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Been very cool. My daughter, though, my 18-year-old, is like no brand loyalty at all. Like right, that was the era that I grew up in. We knew, right, Lindsay, it was like you aligned with one or two brands and that was it. She struggles to buy anything new. So her sustainability focus is on buying something that exists, that is used, but it's more for like the hunt of it and the find, more so than because that's a more sustainable choice. So I've been fascinated like watching it play out in real time, because consumers, yeah, the young consumers are interesting bunch.
It seems like it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like with everything.
Yeah, for sure. So Derek, how is your experience in sustainability woven into the Underswell now in what you're doing today?
I guess the way it's woven in is, I mean, I think I've spent so much time on this, and it has become something I'm really passionate still about, that I just believe that, at the heart of business are the people that work at that business. And most people are good. We're good to each other. We're good neighbors. We're good on the streets and on the roads to each other. We're just like, yeah, we're just decent. And I do believe that it's like, if people knew and could control it, they would just want to be doing business better. And no, I don't want to be, part of deforestation and killing the Amazon or endangering species or soil degradation or whatever all the impacts we might have, or sending toxic pollutants into the air. So most people don't want to be a part of that, but they just don't, they're not always aware of what they can do and what their impacts are. So I think always I'll kind of come to business with this spin of like, I think we can do it better, and let's just be conscious and responsible. But I think more importantly, while I was at the Underswell, I was always, and from the beginning, so in 2017, I think I started with my first podcast, because I wanted to, as I was doing the Underswell, I'm like, I want to start talking to people, founders, entrepreneurs, people who are doing business in this way. I want to hear their story. And to me, that was always inspiring. One, tell your entrepreneurial story. Tell me about the products you make, whether it was Guayaki, yerba mate, or Sambazon, or just natural products that had more of a sustainability spin. Come and share your story on my podcast. Let's have a conversation. So that has led to what I'm doing now. With the podcasting, it's just always something I wanted to do. So I guess the fact that sustainability got me into podcasting, sustainability is always going to be a through line, and podcasting is a continuous through line. I guess that might be the answer. But if I can add this into, to me, the underswell is this idea, is this concept that, and it comes from surfing, I think, surfing and yoga. To me, like as a surfer, the best times of my surfing are not when the swell peaks and everybody knows about it and you're waiting for that magical day and you get out there, because one, if you haven't done all the in-between things like the weekly, the daily practice, if you're a yoga practitioner, it's like you got to kind of show up all the time and every day and bake it in, and it's the little moments that get you ready for the big moment. So it's just this idea of kind of, and it's the same with sustainability, right? It's like, it's the little things you can do to always have some progress. It's not just the one big initiative that you have that you're going to talk about. It's like, well, what are all the little dials and twists, things that you're turning to make it happen? So it's about all the little things happening underneath the surface that really drive the big things at the end.
I love that. I think social media in a lot of ways is about the little things, right? It's like sharing the little things that you're doing, if you're sharing frequently on a daily basis, so that when you do have the big things, like you launch a podcast or you have a big article or whatever, like you have that experience, you have that audience and that engagement already baked into what you're doing to be able to share it.
I'm shaking my head because it's so true. It's like, and I don't follow my own medicine for that. And I was watching one of your shows where you, Kayla, you were interviewing Lindsay, asking about, you're talking about newsletters and you should be doing it every day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I know, yeah, that is my philosophy. Like, do the little things because that all adds up. It's just really hard to be disciplined, but it's a really good reminder. And thanks for that. That's gonna be my takeaway from the episode here. That
I'll tell my clients, to make a big deal out of everything. So even if it is a small thing, nobody else knows that it's a small thing and it's a big thing to you. So, put it out there, make it a big deal, get people really excited about what you're doing.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, if you don't post about what you're doing, then people aren't going to know, right? Because like, how often are you telling people the little things that happen, the little things that are happening that lead up to the big things, right? You usually like think about the big things first. So I think like with social, even a takeaway for the three of us today is like, let's all get on Instagram stories and share that we did a podcast today and we did a recording, or share on LinkedIn. So and that provides a teaser too for the big thing when our episode launches in the future. So
that really is like an aha moment, because I also like, because all the work I do on careers right now with helping break down people's careers and talking to young people, it's the same thing. I always remind them that just don't wait for that the right big paycheck or the right big position. Like, just get going and start piecing things together little by little by little by little. And then eventually you look back and you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. I built a really solid, list here. I've got a really good campaign going. I'm seeing the results. So, wow, we're really breaking through some ideas here. This is great.
yeah, I had a boss back in the day when I was back in the corporate world, and he told me when I was looking for a job, and we obviously had a close relationship because I did tell him I was looking for another job at the time. But he said, don't focus on your next job. Focus on what the next job gets you to get the job after that. So always be 2 steps ahead. Don't just think about the next job that you get, but what is that job going to lead you to? So
yeah, that's good. Good advice.
Good feedback too. Yeah, I mean, that's great advice too. I mean, like my daughter's training right now for the junior lifeguard swim test, and I feel like that's something I'm going to tell her after school today. It's like, hey, all these little things, these swim practices that you've been doing for the last several months are all leading to the big thing, which is your test. So
yeah, exactly. Good luck to her.
Thank you.
So speaking of podcasts, how did you come to realize the power of podcasts in building professional identities?
I think one, I always felt like I've always been fascinated by the art form, if you will, right? I love hearing people's stories. I think it's a great opportunity to connect. But I think specifically the previous job I had, I was working as a senior director for an agency, a sustainability strategy and communications agency called Think Parallax. And they had me do their podcast, which was great. That was the first time I got paid to do a podcast, right? I was like, yeah, I got a paid podcasting gig. I was doing other things, but I did get to create it and worked with their team over there. We built it out. And one of the guests we had on the show, and it was really about highlighting the work in sustainability and ESG spaces, trying to reach new clients and just tell stories. I was out in Climate Week in New York in September last year, And one of the events I went to was at the EY, or Ernst and Young building, which is this beautiful big corporate building. It's so impressive. You walk in, you go up to the 30th, 40th floor, something like that. This amazing view of Manhattan. I mean, everything is just overwhelming, right? You're like, wow, this is Manhattan, New York. I used to dream of being like a consultant when I was a kid. I kind of thought that would be something I would do, but I didn't. So anyway, I meet this young woman. Her name's Cristina Lobo Guerrero, and she was from Colombia, and she went to Columbia University after going to Texas Austin's University, and she was a consultant there, a climate strategy, sustainability strategy consultant there. And I met her. I'm like, God, I would love to have you on the show just to talk about your young career, how you got into Ernst and Young, because I mean that's a dream for a lot of grad students. I'd love to, she said. So we had this conversation. We had a great episode. She's super sharp, has this really good story of persistence. She had spent like 6 years trying to get a job at EY, and she finally gets the job. So really fun story. But at the end of it, after we stopped recording, she goes, Derek, that was so fun. Thank you. She goes, that was like a once in a lifetime opportunity for me. And I just was like, it's just, no, there's no way. Like she's so sharp. Like you should be on podcasts, all the time. But it got me thinking that it is a space that often gets reserved for, and this doesn't mean to paint me as like, oh, wow, like I'm a guest being invited on the show. But typically you invite experts, people who have been around for a while, they've written a book or just something. And there's this whole kind of realm of people that don't always maybe maybe they don't feel like they have the confidence to put themselves out there to say, hey, I'd be a great guest on your show, or people are not asking them to be on the show. And I just felt like, wow, there's a real opportunity to democratize it because there are so many stories out there. And then as I was transitioning, I'm no longer at Think Parallax, so as I was getting ready to transition, go back out into the marketplace, it's like, wow, there are a lot of people with really good resumes and work experience that are in the job market right now, not getting noticed. And they're just frustrated looking for jobs for 6, 7, 8 months, or longer. And I just felt like, God, is there a way to reach them and help elevate them and get them out of that sea of LinkedIn bios and ghost jobs and interviews that are going nowhere, or they're just not getting the call, and maybe there's taking that, once in a lifetime opportunity that it shouldn't have to be, and trying to get it into the hands and say, hey, anybody can be on a podcast, and I've got a platform, come on the platform, I can help, share your story and your voice, start doing some promoting for you, and allow people to promote themselves or their service, or, if they're looking to get recruited onto a team or a program. So I think it really stemmed from that interview with her and seeing the job market, I guess,
Yeah, I think it's such a unique way to tell your career story, right? I mean, there's only so much a resume can provide, right? It's 1 page, maybe 2 pages max. But how do you describe a 20-year career in 2 pages, right? So it's like podcasts can really help you to tell that story in a more engaging way.
Yes, and I call it a professional podcast profile is the way I kind of pitch it as. And it's this idea of, just like you said, it's, you add a voice to your LinkedIn profile. And I just find that people, you might have a great resume and it's like, yeah, that person looks pretty interesting. Let's put them in the, should talk to, maybe we'll follow up with them. But then a lot of times once you speak to somebody and you're in a conversation with them, it allows you to kind of see their full personality, see how they respond to questions, and just go, oh, actually, it can go both ways, right? You can have a great resume and go, and this person is really amazing. Or you can go, oh, resume looks okay, but geez, look at their personality. Look how spontaneous they are. They'd be a great leader in our organization. So I think it can work both ways to highlight the person and help as sort of an interview before the interview for recruiters and people looking for good talent. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Because most people, I know, if you're looking to get hired, obviously you're going to do research on your company. But at the same way, like if I'm going to interview someone or help a client potentially interview a candidate, I Google that person, I look at their LinkedIn, I want to see what they're up to. So that's a great piece of content to have to really showcase your personality and your style too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And imagine if that came to the top of the search, your search rather than my Instagram surfing photos or something, which I don't have any. So
right on. That's awesome. I love that. So, I mean, we talked about this a little bit with authentic storytelling, but how do you feel like the evolution of personal branding and business branding, like what do you see happening with this whole evolution of personal branding in the age of podcasting, in the age of digital storytelling? Like, How do you see it going from here? I mean, as someone who is a pioneer in sustainability and now in the podcasting profiles for personalities and careers, like what do you see looking ahead?
I mean, one, it's funny. There was an interesting piece on it was the Hello Monday show with Jesse Hempel, I believe, and they're doing a big feature on building your personal brand. So I know it's everything right now, and that's one of the things as I interview people talking about their careers, you're hearing people say. I mean, we've all had to pivot. We either pivot by choice because, for me, I was just like, this looks interesting. Or a lot of us are like, we have to pivot in order to keep up with, whatever is coming around the corner, whether it's AI or whatever it might be. But I think a lot of times, like being the best thing then is not to necessarily paint yourself as an expert in sustainability, but sort of like I can be an expert in all these different things, and I want you to learn more about me, the person, and what I can bring to your organization, as opposed to just being that specific. Because if you narrow down to that niche, as I did with sustainability, all of a sudden then that had all of these sub niches underneath that. And I'm like, I cannot keep up with all of those things. And a lot of my peers that were in it with me at that early time, they've stayed in it. But I just really felt like, trying to build my personal brand and build something that, I was known for. I think it's just so important. And I think it's evolving. And I think it's tough because not everybody has it in them to feel like, hey, you know what? I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to be doing videos and I'm going to be do photos and constantly putting content out there. But I think it's a must do. And I think it's going to just continue to get more intense and more expected to kind of say, hey, we want to see the full picture of you, not just know, what role or skill, what role you had or what skills you have. So I don't know, I guess it's just going to continue to evolve and intensify. I think that'd be my call for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think if you are not comfortable being on video and on camera, I know someone named Kayla who is very good at getting you to be comfortable on camera. So working with a social media manager, consultant to help you get comfortable, because it doesn't have to be this kind of like really daunting task. It's just like, hey, I'm just talk about what you know. And like you find that once you do that and you just start rolling, people feel very comfortable.
Yeah. And there are so many, there's so many tools at your disposal now as well. So it's almost like you can't there's no excuse not to now, or have your personal brand. I guess whether how good you use those tools, I guess is something else, but it's ripe for it.
Yeah, definitely. So what advice would you have for someone who's navigating a career transition right now? And how can they use social media to get started and help tell their story? I think we kind of touched on this a little bit too already, but
I think people who are navigating their careers, I guess it depends on what stage they're at. Obviously, I've been really fascinated with navigating my career at 50, at beyond 50. That's something interesting. But I think I think, staying open, constantly networking and staying connected with people. And I think right now I'm seeing a lot of, on LinkedIn especially, people kind of reaching out and going, hey, I'm kind of done connecting here. Who wants to go meet, for coffee, or who's in my area that wants to go connect? And one of my connections just recently Jake Peruka just put out a thing saying, hey, anybody in the area in Costa Mesa who wants to just, book time with me, we'll go talk branding, we'll talk whatever, kind of almost some pro bono work, or just talking about being a dad or going surfing. And I love that. And I think that's really important. Mm-hmm. So I think it's staying networked, staying connected, going to events, is because we know that your next opportunity is likely coming from someone or someone that they know, way more than just like seeing it come up on LinkedIn, applying, or Indeed, and applying and getting that call back. It just almost seems like that is so rare now. Most every time it's going to be because, oh, I was on the show with Lindsay and Lindsay mentioned me to somebody else, and that person, boom. And it is almost always that way. So I think whatever you're doing, it's about staying connected and getting out there and having conversations with people.
I could not agree with that more.
Yeah. One thing I always share too with I have friends right now that, the job market's tough right now. And I have friends that are looking for jobs and who have reached out to me and we've talked about what they're looking for. And one of the pieces of advice that I've given recently, and I'll share with you and with everyone listening, is schedule lunches. Go on LinkedIn, go find someone that you haven't connected with in a while, that you had a connection with at some point, and just say, hey, just want to reconnect and see how you're doing. Can we grab lunch? Can we grab coffee? And try and schedule 3 lunches in the next month and just see where that goes, because you don't want to be the person who only comes to someone when you need something, right? You want to be developing those relationships and continuing to build your network, because like you said, you just don't know where it's going to go or where this road might lead. So it's great to keep yourself open to all opportunities.
And I will say, if I can plug this in real quick as well. So I'm the president of the UC Irvine Alumni Association, which means I have to go to a lot of events and I'm always getting invited to different things. And at first, when early on, I was like, oh, it's just another thing I have to go to. Now, though, I've flipped that script. I'm like, I want to go because there's an opportunity to meet so many interesting people from so many different spaces. And so these are great opportunities just to get out. And so the more you say yes to those invites for lunch, for coffee, for an event, or something that you're like, I don't know if that's really my thing, just go. It's so important. It's such a good opportunity to get out there and meet people.
Yeah, it's so true, especially after COVID too, when we went years essentially without doing in-person events and only seeing each other on Zoom. So so get outside, go out and see people.
That's the big takeaway.
I love it.
So, Derek, as we wrap up this episode, what is one common trait you see in people who successfully navigate career transitions?
I don't know if I'd be able to narrow it down to one. I might have 3, but one I think comes to mind. It's a growth mindset, right? I think it's this idea of always being open to the new thing and to whatever is coming your way. I think something that I've always struggled with is when I hear people say like, well, that's not really my thing. It's funny, you've heard me, I've already said like, I'm not very good at going down the details, but whether I'm not a finance person or marketing's not really my thing. It's like, be willing to, I guess the people that have done things successfully, I see them always willing to say, well, I'll just go learn. Then I can learn about that. I will figure out how to do it. I'll become a better marketer. I will become a better at personal branding. So I think always being curious and being open and just asking questions and being willing to engage with people or that topic that you need to get to break through to your next level. But also know, I think those that have done it successfully also know that there is uncertainty kind of around at every point. And I think the people that do it the best are the ones that are okay with that and go, yep, I'm not sure where this is going to go. I'm not sure where this entrepreneurial, endeavor is going to take me, but I know that there's something good and I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to stay curious about it and just keep going. So I think being able to navigate that uncertainty with a growth mindset and constantly being curious and creative and being open to creativity, I think is sort of a common trait that I see that always gets me going, yeah, that's the thing. So that's what I'm relying on. And hopefully that'll help others out there as they navigate their career journeys as well.
Yeah, I love that. The growth mindset's so important at any age, really. I mean, I'm talking to my kids a lot, and they're 7 and 10 about growth mindset and learning. And I think that's something you can apply at any age, really.
Always learning, always learning.
Never stop learning.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, Derek, thank you so much. This was so great to have you on the episode today. If people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Just head to the website, theunderswell.com. You can go straight. You can find me on LinkedIn. I try to stay active as well. That's an area that I've really been kind of, sort of disciplining myself to try to stay active and engaged. So Derek A. Sabori or just Derek Sabori on LinkedIn, Instagram, or the Underswell. That's my personal brand is Derek or the Underswell.
And we'll put the links to Derek's profiles in the show notes. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Derek.
Thank you both.
Thanks for listening to Dose of Social. We're out.
Thanks, everyone.